Hey guys, Ted Elsner, Sacramento Historical Fencing Academy. So, debates on social media drawing me away from working on my rules of the row stock. Okay, that's a lie. I'm in a section where I still need a partner for a couple more, so those will be forthcoming. But anyway, the question for today that I have to ask came about from the same debate as in the video where I was talking about, martial sport versus martial art versus, weapons of war, soldier training, etc. The number of times that a technique is mentioned in a manual, does that give us a good indication of how important that technique actually is, right? If we talk about something a lot, that automatically means we should do it a lot more, whereas if we don't mention it very much, then it can't be that important, right? That's what that means. So the reason this came up, right, is that there's a point where Meyer uses the term thrust a couple of times during the longsword. It's only a handful of times. I want to say 6, right, out of 39,000 words in the longsword. He says thrust like 6 times. So it's not something he particularly cares about. Okay, maybe, yes, no, we don't know, right? Like he's told us explicitly in the foreword to the book that he has certain guidelines, and he tells us at one point that one of the things he's going to do in the longsword is he's going to prioritize the cuts over the thrusts. He's save the thrusts for their own time later, rapier, but in the longsword he's going to talk about the cuts mostly just because that's the best place to talk about them. Okay, so he's given us that, and then he doesn't talk about the thrusts as much. Okay, that makes sense. But maybe thrusts aren't as important for that reason. So let's look at another thing that appears in the longsword that he tells us about, and that's the absetzen. Okay, so the absetzen, after he's had his discussion about parrying and he gets into the handworks, he introduces the absetzen, and he tells us that the absetzen is the true form of parrying. It's the true setting off. It's the true way that we're going to defend ourselves, where we're going to parry and then hit all in a single motion. And oh my God, isn't it important? Okay, he's explicit. So for such an explicit thing, he must talk about absetzen a lot in the longsword, right? He's told us it's the true thing. We should talk about it a lot. Yeah, he mentions it 4 times through the entire 39,000 words of the longsword. 4 times does he use the word absetzen. The first 2 times are in a list of techniques that he's about to talk about. The 3rd time is as the heading for the technique itself when he mentions it. And the 4th and final time is in one particular play where he finally says to absetz. That's it, 4 times. So is it important? Well, you've watched my videos, you know my feelings on it. We know from the rules of the row stock that we want to gain that overbind, and the absetzen is going to be one of the best ways that we can go about gaining the overbind so that we can immediately launch our attack from the bind right back in to the opponent. So we know that it's important. And if we look at the other sections of the book, we see that, yep, there it is. It's being used numerous times. So really our takeaway from this is that we have to be really careful about correlating the number of times that a particular technique is talked about with how important it is to actual fencing and what we do. Another example for this is the zwerk, right? The thwart, as it's sometimes translated, or the twer, or however, right? Sorry, my German's terrible. I anglicize it. It's what we do. So with that, he tells us that if it didn't exist, like half of fencing in modern fencing wouldn't occur, modern for him. So must be really, really important. Well, again, if we're just looking then in the context of like a feck school environment where the target is going to be the head, yeah, right, the zwerk is going to be really, really important. But when we back out and we start to look at fencing as a whole, unsurprisingly, it becomes less common and less important. Still a really important technique. It's one of the Meisterhau. It obviously is important, but it's not half of all fencing. So I guess what I'm telling you is when you're reading your sources, be careful. Sometimes there are things that are so important, right, that they feel, and maybe they're so important but well known for the period, they feel that, okay, well, I can mention it once, and then you'll get that I said it was really important. And so it's understandable. Put your sword on top, hit him, right? Absets, great. Get here, get there. Very important. I don't need to spend a ton of time. And again, we don't know the context of what their, in-class discussions were, what their, the oral tradition was. Maybe it was talked about a ton of that, and it felt unnecessary to write it down. Whereas some of the other things that are maybe a little more non-intuitive to them, but but the absence was. Let's spend a lot more time discussing them. And guys, this is something we see throughout history. There's a lot of different times when a particular thing that's so common to everyday life never gets remarked upon. Fast forward a few hundred years, and nobody knows what the hell the thing is. There's an example of, I think it's from actually the 19th century, of British tea services or condiment services that had like salt and pepper, right, the jars for that, and then there's like a third jar that was commonly included for something. We're not really sure what it was. Nobody bothered to write it down. It fell out of fashion, and that knowledge was lost. But it was so important that it was a part of everyday life, but nobody felt the need to talk about it, right? A similar kind of thing happens between like artwork and archaeology, right? Where they're the things that survive, but then there are the things that were everyday. A lot of the swords we like to play with, right, have specifically been selected as the ones that have survived. They've made it through the intervening time intact, and so we draw certain deductions from them and say, oh, this is the way that it must be done. Well, yeah, but look at all the other artwork. And actually, an even better one. In Meyer, right, everybody's wearing Pluderhosen. Oh, Pluderhosen, they're great, the big puffy pants. I have a pair of them, they're fun. Who doesn't love some puffy pants? And not the ones I'm wearing today, but like period Pluderhosen style. There's 3 surviving examples of Pluderhosen. They're in Sweden, okay? They're the ones that everybody that recreates Pluderhosen goes to, and they copy those 3 from Sweden to make their Pluderhosen, right, for their historical fencing or just daily wear. Problem is, each of those 3 made differently, and in the examples, they're lacking seams that we see. Like if we look at Meyer, and here, we'll throw up an image right here, right, of the back of one of the fencers, you can see a seam that was drawn in. It doesn't appear on the 3. So read your sources. Understand your sources. Spend time with them, but don't get lost by, well, they talk about this a whole bunch, we should do it a whole bunch more. Maybe it's just a complex technique or thing that they're trying to get across to you. Conversely, there are things they tell us we should do all the damn time that we just don't do enough in our daily practice. For instance, the slice, right? The slice gets mentioned all the time. And by Meyer, he tells us it's always there for you, right? If you don't know what else to do, put the slice on them, right? Hinder their work. Cool, it's a thing, it's there, we know to do it, people don't do it, right? Just not trained enough. So, I don't know, little rambling thoughts I had today. Sometimes you get on, Facebook and you see a debate going on and it just gets you fired up to talk about it, and that's kind of where I am today. Hopefully it's been interesting to you guys. As always, if you have any comments, concerns, questions, criticisms, witty remarks, down there in the comments, let me know what you think. We can talk about it some more, see if I'm right, see if I'm wrong. Maybe I'm full of crap. Always a possibility. And guys, I should mention, it's also something that came out of this conversation and I always try to live by. If you think I'm wrong, let me know. I'm more than happy to argue with you on it. And the reason I say that is I love to argue my point. But if you convince me, and I'm totally open to it, that my point is wrong, I'll change. I got no problem with that, right? So maybe you think I'm wrong, convince me. I'm going to fight back. I'm going to push because I feel that's necessary on my part, right? But don't give up. Fight with me on it. If you think I'm wrong about something, let me know. I want to hear it, guys. That's the only way we get better. Prevent ourselves from following down a kind of rabbit hole where we get lost from reality. We all have blind spots. Anyway, stay safe. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.